Welcome to another edition of the Plus One Interview, and we have a friend of the show. He's back with us, Mr. Josue. What's going on, my man?
Yo, Carla, how you been, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, man. It's shoot. Yeah.
I feel like we can spend an hour catching up, man.
Oh, it's definitely been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but a lot going on in the NBA right now. We got first round matchups that are still happening, and Celtics, they're on to the second round. They a sweep of the Sixers, which surprised me a little bit, but kind of did not surprise me. I thought it'd be a competitive 6 games, but that
That got ugly quick, right? Yeah, it got pretty ugly.
it was not that. What did you make of how quickly they got rid of the Sixers?
I think it's good for the Celtics, honestly. I mean, for obvious reasons. You don't want to prolong that series. You want to keep that momentum going and carry it into the second round. But, I was a bit surprised. Even before the news about Ben Simmons, I still gave them 5 games, and I was leaning towards 6. But when the Ben Simmons news came out, I was like, nah, I think Celtics will do it in 5. But I think what surprised me the most is some of those other guys didn't really come up big down the stretch.
Yeah.
I know someone like Tobias Harris. You look at his stat lines and his averages, and you're thinking, okay, well that sounds pretty on point for Tobias Harris. But I thought in these circumstances, you get a little bit of more production. He did do a terrific job of rebounding. A lot of guys did on that team. But I was a little surprised though. Yeah, for sure. But the Celtics did what they were supposed to do. They look really good right now.
Yeah, and one thing they was having some issues with was the rebounding. The rebounding was a bit of issues. They had to do kind of team rebounding. It seemed like every time a shot go up, you'd hold your breath to see if they get the rebound.
Yeah, you can't get away with that in this series, McCullough. I can't stress that enough. I mean, second chance opportunities, putbacks, just things that really drive the Toronto Raptors can really put you in a bad situation on the wrong end of a huge run. We've seen it over and over again with this team. We've seen a little bit of everything. You look at the season series, or at least throughout the last 3 years, it's pretty much split right down the middle. But we've gotten like a little bit of everything, right? We've seen the Toronto Raptors just crush the Celtics. We've seen them, come back against the Celtics. Same thing can be said for both sides. But I think when it comes down to rebounding, like, look, 20 offensive rebounds against the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 3. I still can't get over that. I can't get over the fact that you were able to give up 20, not only 20 offensive rebounds, but 20 second chance points, and you still won by, a handful of points. Normally you're on the wrong end of that game, but that wasn't the case. And I'm telling you right now, if the Celtics, if something similar to that nature happens against the Toronto Raptors, that's going to be a blowout game. The Raptors, they capitalize on those kind of rebounding and again, those momentum driving possessions where they can really get going and blow you out.
Yeah, and if you look at both of these teams, Houston gets so much praise and adulation for their small ball lineup. But if you look at the Celtics and the Raptors, they've pretty much been playing small ball all year long. I know they have Ibaka and Gasol, but Ibaka's athleticism, you don't really see Gasol down the stretch that much. You see Ibaka, and the way Ibaka can stretch the floor, and then the way Siakam, how he attacks, and just the matchups there. There's some interesting matchups in this game, and we're gonna see small ball at its finest between these two teams.
Yeah, no question. And I'm glad you brought up Ibaka because he makes things so interesting. I mean, what an amazing year for him. He's been humongous for these guys. Putting up 20, like you said, he can stretch the floor. He's a force on defense. The pick and roll set, which was huge for the Celtics in the Celtics' favor against the Philadelphia 76ers. But in this matchup, that's a really, really tough team to go up against in the pick and roll set because Siakam can stay out there with you. He can stay out there with your main your go-to guy, whether we're talking about Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown down the stretch. Kemba Walker, I think, is a huge advantage for the Celtics here. I do like them. I do like him in this matchup against him and Kyle Lowry. It does go beyond that, but I like that Kemba, the Celtics have that in their favor because it does go a long way with those 2 point guards. It's going to be a really good showdown between those two. But yeah, Ibaka's been balling out, man. And you look at the front court and other guys that come off the bench, they've really been stepping up, especially throughout the playoffs. We've seen a lot of guys step up for this team.
Yeah, and Kyle Lowry, his status for Thursday's game is unknown, uncertain right now with the ankle sprain. The Celtics are already dealing with their own injury with Gordon Hayward going out with that high ankle sprain that he has. So it's gonna be. I think the key for this is gonna be the benches. We just saw Toronto's bench put up 105 points. We've seen the Celtics bench, the guys that come in, they contribute in any way, shape, even whether it's big or small. Especially with Marcus Smart now being in the starting lineup because of Gordon Hayward. Now we need this. The Celtics bench is going to be key in this series. They're gonna have to step up a lot. A lot is going to be asked of them in this series.
Yeah, no question. You look at the Toronto Raptors, man. They got the Celtics beat on that side of things. Their second unit, I think, is they're a deeper team than the Celtics. I always say the Celtics are much more top heavy compared to other top teams in the East. Like 1 through 6, they're solid, rock solid. I put them up against any team in the NBA. Mm-hmm. But after that, that's when it gets really thin, and the Raptors had that to their advantage. They had that defense, that outside touch. Losing Gordon Hayward was huge for the Celtics because, Gordon Hayward is a starter, but he really blends in well with that second unit alongside Marcus Smart. Now, you're going to ask Marcus Smart to step things up a little bit. You're going to ask him to do a little bit more than he's usually been doing for the Celtics all year long. But that, of course, is no problem for Marcus Smart. He can't come up big in these big moments. My only concern with someone like Marcus Smart is how consistent he's going to be when it comes to scoring. Now, I know people may look at Marcus Smart as someone like this team doesn't need him to score big, but for this second unit, they're going to need a little bit more than what we've seen so far. Marcus Smart has had a good time in terms of, being who he is and coming up big in those plays and on defense, but in the scoring aspects of things, in Orlando, he struggled a bit. He's a little streaky. Marcus will surprise you when he struggles. We've seen that before. But this is, he's going to have his hands full here in that backcourt. Van Fleet and, other guards that can really rattle the Celtics' second unit. I'm going to look at someone like Marcus Smart and also a couple members of the starting unit to sort of help those in transition when they're trying to, give the starters a little bit of rest and they have to rely on the second unit. You expect to see someone like, Marcus Smart, of course, getting a little bit more minutes, but also maybe someone like Gordon Hayward, because of Gordon Hayward's out, someone like Jaylen Brown, and maybe a little bit of Tatum. I think Brad Stevens is going to be a little careful what he does with Tatum. I've noticed that when he does put Tatum in with that second unit, it's almost like he's a decoy. He's more of a just out there to sort of move the ball a bit before he goes to the bench and gets his rest.
I think another key guy off the bench, if he gets minutes, will be Romeo Langford. We've seen him get minutes here and there, but I think if he's able to see the court, I think his contribution is going to be key. And then I want to look at this matchup between Jason Tatum and Pascal Siakam. Now, this is probably going to be the two go-to guys down the stretch because of the way they can score the ball. And we both know how both are freakishly athletic and they can do so many things. But I think that's one of the key matchups I'm looking at because the way Jason Tatum has played, he had that one bad game. I think it was game 3 when he scored 15 points, but he was able to make some key plays. But in this game, I think he needs to be consistent throughout the series. He can't have these moments where he goes 2 for 12, 2 for 18. But he can't have one of those type of games.
Yeah, definitely. The Celtics are going to need all of that. And when you talk about this matchup in particular, what I love the most is down the stretch, what's going to happen between these two. Pascal Siakam is sort of heating back up again. Yeah, he was out to a slow start when they first got to Orlando, but it seems like he's getting back into the groove of things after watching him in that first round matchup. But the one thing about the Celtics and Raptors when it comes down to those nail-biting games, I'm going to give the edge to the Celtics because I think Brad Stevens can come out with those big plays down the stretch and really surprise teams. When you least expect it. But when it comes to Pascal Siakam and Jason Tatum, I'm giving the edge to Jason Tatum, but it's not by a lot. And what I mean by that is when it comes down to it, I do think Jason Tatum can still come up big down the stretch against someone like Pascal Siakam. But I think the Toronto Raptors are a kind of team where they're good at building a solid lead before down the stretch, as opposed to the Celtics where they'll be neck and neck with you, and then they'll hit you with the final punch at the end. That's sort of been the MO, especially with these two teams in their matchups. But yeah, the Toronto Raptors again because they're so tough and because they have guys that can come up big on both ends. They're good enough to build that solid lead before the 2-minute mark, and then before you know it, the Brad Stevens is emptying out his bench.
Yeah, and with them, when they get a big lead, it's pretty hard to come back on them
Definitely. Yeah.
because of their defense, the way they play defense and their depth. So yeah, we definitely got to look at that, making sure that keep the game stays. The game doesn't get out of control early or before halftime because usually they make their run. And we got to give a lot of credit to Nick Nurse because there was a lot of question marks about this team that since Kawhi Leonard left, nobody knew how this team was going to look. But Nick Nurse did a great job of
Oh
just
man,
keeping the
definitely.
momentum going, inserting new guys in the rotation, just getting the most out of these guys.
Yeah, and that's what makes this team so tough. You saw what happened with Kyle Lowry. It looks like he might be able, good to go for game one. Maybe he's on minutes restriction, maybe not. But you're going to see this team rally around that. They're so close knit, and they hear what was going on before. They hear what's still going on right now, and they don't like it. Everyone's talking Celtics and Bucks, Eastern Conference Finals. Very few people are putting them in that conversation, and they sort of quiet those people down, right? Ever since the season resumed. And they've just been on a tear. And yeah, the Celtics did give them that blowout loss not too long ago. But again, it just feels like these two teams are on completely two different. You know what I mean? Like we knew after that game that you couldn't use that game as a measuring stick for where these two teams stand right now. And it's just going to be such a good matchup because we finally get it. We're finally going to get the Celtics versus the Raptors. I feel like we've been waiting for this for years because these two have always been going at it, and the Raptors has just been like waiting to finally give the Celtics to prove, look, we're worthy enough. We can knock you guys out. And it's the first chance to finally let this happen for us to see it happen. And it's gonna be a dogfight, man. I think this one goes a distance for sure. 7 games.
Yeah, the second round of the Eastern Conference is very interesting because we got 4 teams, and each matchup it's like they all match up well against each other. So we got the potential to have 2 7-game series in the second round of the Eastern Conference.
Definitely. And much credit to Nick Nurse, man. These guys just really buy into what he's preaching. And what a moment that was last week when they presented the Coach of the Year award and on TNT. He didn't even expect it. His high school coach was there.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is really touching, around these times, the playoffs and when guys are always around each other more often, than the regular season. But then now what's going on now is so unique that these guys are always together, in the bubble. It's been about 2 months now. And, yeah, like I said, the same thing could be said about the Celtics and how close-knit those guys are. This is the collision course we've been waiting for, these two teams to go at it. I can't wait.
Definitely. And one player I've really been impressed with this entire bubble has been Jaylen Brown. The way he's actually elevated his game and the maturity in his game, he has matured a lot in offensively, also defensively, because now he doesn't fall in love with the 3 like he did last year. He's now, when he doesn't have it, he's attacking the basket more, which is something a lot of people have been wanting him to do a lot more. He's getting to the free throw line a lot more. So Jaylen Brown, he's matured and elevated his play in the bubble.
I think what's impressed me the most is the way he's reading the game now. I feel like he was always sort of second-guessing himself.
Okay, everybody.
He wasn't quite sure if he was going to pull up for the 3 or if he wanted to go inside. That was always sort of the ongoing, debate in his head. But now that he's able to read the defense so much differently now, so much better now, that I just think it's just second nature to him. He's not even thinking about when he's on the move, whether he's going to pull up. And I'm telling you, that first step, man, no one can stay in front of him. I'm so amazed by how many teams will throw different guys at him. And he just has that ability, like you said, that athleticism. And this playoffs, man, he's been everything for that starting 5 for Brad Stevens and the Celtics. And I think he's a really tough matchup for the Raptors. But on the defensive end of things, I can see him also coming up big with some huge stops down the stretch. Of course, they're going to need every single one of them against this team. But, yeah, man, Jaylen Brown, he's no question an all-star in the making. Probably see him next year. Finally get that honor.
He should have been there this year, but
I know, man. I think again, if the Celtics, if they were one of the top teams or at least number 1, I think it would have been no question he would have been up there. But he was really close though. I think he was closer than people realized.
Yeah, and then an unsung hero for the Raptors is Fred VanVleet. He's really, he's just been playing a phenomenal basketball in that series against the against the Magic, he really found his groove in that series, and he's gonna be a tough matchup. But defensively, the Celtics got the size that can kind of exploit him on the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, 17 points a game. He just continues to elevate his game year after year, I feel like. And, you know, we're seeing him in the playoffs. He's just so important for this team on both ends. But his scoring is what makes him so tough to guard, especially for, you know, the Celtics backcourt, which I think is going to be interesting, especially to see who comes off the bench, who can give you some solid minutes where they just sort of stop the bleeding or give you some lockdown defense. I like what you said about Langford. It's funny, man. Langford feels like we got this ongoing joke on CLNS where he's like, Langford's like the sophomore who, whenever he checks in varsity, you know, whenever he gets some varsity minutes, everyone goes nuts. But then it's just like, is he just going to stand there in the corner, or are we going to see him, you know, come up big? We've seen both, right? I feel like it's like he'll come up big, and we're like, oh, that's what we're talking about. And then we won't see that for 2 games in a row. And then he'll come back and he'll do a putback or some huge offensive rebound to build another possession. Those are the kind of plays that are going to go a long way for the second unit. Yeah. Again, the second unit, I don't expect them to go and run off the scoreboard. And, you know, they're not going to come anywhere near to scoring 100 points like the Raptors did, like their second unit did. Yeah. You know, breaking records out there. But what they are going to do is stop the bleeding. I think Romeo Langford can be one of those guys. Grant Williams woke up, it seemed like, the last game where he came up big in those minutes that he got towards the end, or at least in the second half. You know, which one of these guys is going to step up big? Maybe it's one of the rookies. Maybe it's Shemi Ojale. You know, Brad Stevens with his rotations, you never know what to expect because they do go team by team. So heading into this one, we may see Robert Williams right off the bench, first person off the bench. We might see more Cantor than we saw before. You know, Cantor proved himself in the first round. He seems like a double-double machine. I can expect someone like him, especially in the series, to get significant playing time. But to see guys after that, you know, after those first couple of guys off the bench, who will Brad Stevens turn to? I think it'll be more defensive-minded than anything.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what do you have this series? Who do you have in this series? How many games are we looking at?
I'm giving Celtics the edge here. I've literally gone back and forth with this, man. And trust me, it wasn't easy. I was going Toronto. Before the playoffs started, and even a week ago, I still had Toronto as winning the East. I'm going to give this one to Boston. I think Boston squeezes this one out in 7 games. A lot of different things are going to be happening here, man, between Nick Nurse and Brad Stevens. This is going to be like a chess match between the two, and it's going to be so interesting to see which one can out-trick the other.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in that game, first game 1 is Thursday at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN.
And by the way, Brad Stevens had 0 votes for number 1, zero first-place votes for Coach of the Year. Don't think Brad's not – don't think he doesn't have that on his dry erase board. You know, he's looking at that every day.
Has he won one yet? I think there's been some time
he came 4th. He came 4th one year. That was the closest. Maybe 3rd. Excuse me. I think he came 3rd. That was the closest.
I think he should have at least 2 by now, but that's
soon. Hopefully, we'll see.
All right. Josue, tell them where they can find you. Social media, and also where they can find your work.
Of course, but check me out on Twitter. I'm at Joe_Sway. You can check my work out on heavy.com. I got plenty of stuff coming out. I have a couple stories actually just came out yesterday. If you want to check that out, it's at heavy.com. But of course, give me a follow on Twitter at Joe_Sway.
All right, and there you have it. It's been another edition of Plus One with my guy Josue. Guys,
appreciate it, McCall. Anytime, man.
Yeah, man. All right.